Hello guys, I'm Super Ron, welcome back to the channel and we are back at Auto Shack on the Caddy. We are converting this car to air suspension and in the last episode we got all the mechanicals done. We've converted the rears to 4-link suspension with airbags, we've got the front air struts on, we've done the chassis notches, everything is mechanically ready to slam it to the floor. But we need to control it. And for that we carried on opening all our packages from AirRide. So this is an AirLift Performance 3P control kit. We've got our manifold, we've got our tank, we've got our compressor, and we've got our self-contained loom. So they're really easy to wire up. The loom is all self-sufficient. All you need to do is add an ignition live and a battery live and an earth, and that's all taken care of internally. We've got the 2 wires that go to the compressor, these 2 wires, and that is it electronically done. We then have our solenoid manifold, that's got the 4 ports, one for each corner. We've got our tank and our exhaust, and that is all run in the plastic line. We've got all the accessories that came with it. We've got our water trap, all our fittings, everything we need to connect it all together. But as always, we need a to and a from. We've got our to, which is our 4 corner airbags. We need our from, so we need to work out where to mount this. In the last Caddy, we had this mounted up on the bulkheads, but in here I think we'll have it down here somewhere. But what we have got in this one is all this boxing, so we can hide a lot away. Usually when I'm doing an AirRide install in a boot, it's quite easy to hide because you've got a parcel shelf here, you've got the quarters around, but on a Caddy you are very open and exposed, so you've got to make the back look just as pretty as the front. Luckily, as you can see in this Caddy, someone has already boarded it all out and made these sides. And what I found is when I took the side off, in here is completely hollow. So as you can see, all the standard Caddy internal panels are still there, and it's just open and hollow. So what this means for us is we can mount this down in here, then all the messy pipes that come out that look like a bit of spaghetti will all be hidden, and we can put the lid all back on, and then just have the nice tidy air tank out in the open. The other good thing about this is we've got our rear airbags just below here, so I can just drill a hole, grommet it, and that can come pop up straight across to our manifold. So we'll P-clip it all the way along the wood because we don't want anything flapping, but that is going to hide it and make a really tidy install. Not sure whether we'll put the compressor in there or have that out in the open next to the tank. These do look fairly tidy. You can have them running around nicely. I'll see what sits up and where things sit. We've got this skateboard in here, but that is actually screwed on for display use only. But I think we'll keep that as a feature and put the air tank somewhere here. And then maybe the compressor at the end, or maybe the compressor can go in that box behind it. But whichever way we go, it's going to be really nice hiding all the pipes away. In the white one, we had a fully exposed buck, so I had to make sure everything was really nicely formed. Everything came out of the manifold and went straight through the floor. Whereas in this one, we've got a little bit more leeway of where we can run things. So let's get our thinking caps on and plan our from points. So here are all the fittings that come with the AirLift Performance kit. We've got our manifold, which has all the screw-in fittings for our push-fit plastic lines. They've all got PTFE tape already applied, so that's all good. The older ones didn't have screw-in fittings, so actually push fittings part of here. So if you ever had a leak, you had to have the whole unit rebuilt, but now they're like this, which is good. We have our water trap, because as the compressor compresses the air, it also heats it, and then when it's sitting in the tank, it then cools down and condensates. So we have a water trap in line, and that will dry the air when it comes from the tank and goes into the manifold, because we don't want our solenoids getting moist because they'll then rust up. Also in the bottom of the tank we have a fitting, and that goes to a shrouder valve. This is used for 2 things. One, as a drain, so you can drain any water out the bottom, and also if there is a problem with the compressor, or if you just want to fill up your tank, you can just put a tyre inflator on here and that will pressurise up. Also it has a safety pressure which can either go in line like this or directly into the tank. We usually just go directly into the back of the tank. And then AirRide have provided their own liquid PTFE, so we won't use that on the fittings for these, but we will use these on the bags. We've got an AirLift Performance cutter, because if you just cut the airline with some snips and don't put a clean cut on it, it will leak out of these. So you've got to use the correct cutter, and that gives the perfect cut every time, and then that will seal in the push fittings. The TA Technics have also supplied us with a lot of merch. We've got a load of key rings, stickers, lanyards, and a lighter. and a pen as well. The air comes into the compressor there. There's a little air filter that screws on there, compresses and then goes into the tank. There's a one-way valve here so the tank doesn't leak back through. So on a well-installed kit, you shouldn't get any air drop. You could leave that aired up, the tank full for any amount of time. When you come back to it, the compressor won't run. Anyone that tries to tell you any different hasn't done a good install. So let's start threading these all together, get everything in place, and then start cutting our lines to length. And what I said about the pressure relief valve, that we usually fit it directly in the tank, turns out AirRide agrees with us. Ignore the instructions and fit the pressure relief valve directly to the tank, exactly as we do. Right, game plan has been made, so I'll show you what I've decided. On the tank, we've got our drain at the bottom. It's upside down at the minute, and our little shrouder valve, I've drilled a hole so that's mounted in there, so that will be on the bottom, so you won't see that. On the back, I've got all our fittings in. I've got two in here. We're going to hide the compressor in one side of the bed and the manifold in the other side of the bed. And I've upgraded these size to the 3/8. All the corners and what the kit comes with is all 1/4 inch bore, and that comes with the smaller fittings. But to get more air in and out to the manifold, we're going up to 3/8. So this is a 3/8 pipe. You can see the difference when they're side by side, so how much more air is going to flow. And then to each corner, each individual bag will go through the single 1/4 inch. We've got our blow off valve here. I've put two in because we had a spare. We've got a little blank to go in there, but you'll see when it's on the back, that'll be nice and symmetrical then. We've got them on the back and then a pipe each side. So this is going to sit, got it all marked out, in here like this. That'll sit dead in the middle. Our pipes are going to come out. We've got one for the manifold this side, one for the compressor that side, and that will just go straight through the board, so you're not going to see any messy pipe work. And then it'll be all symmetrical on the back with the double blow-off valve. Our manifold is going to sneak in here, so that'll be covered up by the top, so we'll screw that to the side. And then if you look at the fittings, we've got our 4/4 for each corner, and then the 3/8, which will be the in and the out. We've got our water trap, which will be 3/8 as well. So it's a bit hard to see, but this will be up on the board there. But we'll have our air coming out of the tank into our valve here. This will be the water trap, and then that will come out of there into the bottom, and then this will go to our four corners. We've got the exhaust here, and that will just blow out, dump its air in there. We don't need to go externally on that. And then around this side, we're going to have our compressor. We've kept them separate because this will get quite hot this side, and we don't want that being around those pipes. Usually the compressor goes straight into the tank, so the fitting is for that. So we've converted it to 3/8 line again. So I'll have that mounted on there. That will run through and just pop out under there. So it's going to be a nice, neat install, but it's going to be completely hidden. We've got our loom, which will run around this side. So our manifold will plug in there. This is the main brain of the whole system. That links into the relay for the compressor and then the wiring to the compressor. These spare ones are if you have height sensors, but we're just going on pressure, not on height on this. And then the rest of this is a super long loom, which needs a power and an earth. So that will go all the way into the car. It's nice and long, so we can run that through here, through there and in. And then we just have our USB for our controller, which will sit in the car as well. So everything is going to be attached under here, and then when the lids are on, all you're going to see is the tank in the middle. So that should be a nice, neat install. So I'll get this secure, line up where our holes are going to be, get them drilled, get this mounted nice and securely, and then we'll have our to's and froms. We can start running all the pipe work. So we'll run all this down through the bottom there, straight into the bag each side, and that can loop around. We'll run the fronts, we'll come out of the bag, and then we usually come through here into the car, run along the sill, and then that will pop out here straight into our manifold. So let's get these mounted and then get piping. And the vision is coming together. So we've got our tank in the middle. I managed to get that back panel off, which allowed us to run the lines and secure them. And then when that's back in, there's just going to be one little hole each side for the pipe to come straight out of and straight into the tank. So that'll be all hidden there. This one comes around, and then we've now got our compressor mounted in here. It is going to be enclosed in the top, but the panel doesn't reach all the way to here. So there'll be plenty of room for all the hot air to escape and it to draw air in. It's not a sealed type box. And then we've got the one-way valve in here. So if we ever need to service the compressor, change the one-way valve, change the filter that's in the front, it'll be nice and easy just to few screws on this top panel and that will all come off. So we've got our wiring, we've just got the plus and the minus, which needs to go to the AirLift loom. which is over there. So this will run, I'll probably will run this all behind this panel as well, over to the other side. So the compressor is all mounted, got a nice lot of room all the way around it. So I'm happy with this side. And then we've got our other pipe going round the other side, which is where I've mounted the manifold and the water trap. So again, if these ever need to be accessed, and we'll probably recommend giving the water trap a drain, which is on the bottom, every few months, just when it builds up a little bit. It's just a few screws along the top, and then that panel pops off, and you can get to everything that you need. So the air comes from the compressor into the tank, fills up the tank, and then it comes out of the tank, through the water trap, and then the clean, dry air loops around into the bottom of the manifold. So that's gonna hide away in there. I put some extra pieces of wood down each side and then just screwed through the top and through the bottom, and that's what it's all mounted on. So that's nice and secure, not going anywhere. And now we've got our from and our to. I've started running the rear lines. So we've gone down, I've drilled a hole in the bottom, put a grommet. So all that is going to be hidden once the top panel is back on. So I am super happy with that. And here's the AirLift loom. So we've got our plug here that will go in the bottom of our manifold, and then close to that is our relay, so we can stick that, probably just screw it in the side there. Again, you shouldn't ever need to touch that, but if you do, it'll be easy accessible, just taking that panel off. I'll extend these two wires that will run along there to the compressor, and then these ones will go inside the car. So I'll probably just drill a hole and a grommet down there, and that will drop into the passenger compartment, and then I can run that through to the fuse box, and we'll be all wired up. So I've done rear right, done tank, exhaust, it's just going to exhaust into here. So we've got 3 more corners to do. And flying along, I've got everything else mounted. Let me show you. So the front lines are on, P-clip there as an anchor point, and they disappear into that grommet. That goes along the sills, and that pops out. You can see just down there at the bottom, because the first couple of centimeters on that lip is actually inside the car. So you can come up, pop up, and then that runs along behind there, all P-clipped along. We've got our wiring loom that runs along here. I've extended that from the relay. That runs up there and goes into the bottom. So the compressor is now mounted and all wired in. So that is sitting in there happy. We've got our one-way valve in the top, all mounted, so nothing's gonna flap around. Then that side goes in there. So this side is all wired and complete. We've got our air line that goes down, grommet drops down to the rear bags, and that runs down with the front left over to the other side. Got my little family of Jubilees all set out. We've already seen the rear one comes along to the manifold, but now we've got the loom in. So we've got the relay for the compressor. The loom is under there, and that runs all the way round along the back and goes into that side because the fuse box is on that side. We've got our front right, goes down there into that grommet, and all 4 come up into the bottom of the manifold. You can't quite see it, but if we go down here, there they are going into their fittings. So everything's neat and tidy and P-clipped under there. All our wiring loom is nice and neat and tidy and P-clipped. This side runs underneath as well and pops out up to the bag. I've got the main wiring loom coming through. And then we've got our fuse, got the jump pack on there at the moment, got our earth that side. So positive and earth goes directly to the battery. And then I've got my ignition live from inside. We're still on CE1 fuse box here. So at the blue plug at the back there, pin 26 is a black, which is an ignition live feed to the horn relay. We can just take our ignition live off there. So that runs back to the manifold. So now if we plug into our USB, turn the ignition on, we should have some life. So let's give that a go. So here's our USB that ran down with all the power wires. So that's coming out, that's plugged into our controller. So let's put our ignition on, see if we have some power. Good sign. And our compressor has kicked in. So looking at this, we want English. Don't wish to calibrate at the minute. So as you can see at the top, we're at 32 PSI. Right, we're up to 100 PSI. Let's see if we can get an air in some bags. Oh. So normally on these we have about 40 PSI in the front, and on these Caddies we only have about 5 to 10 PSI in the back because they're so light. So it's never going to be up at these pressures, but this is the pressure we're going to test at. So now we can get our squirty water bottle, give all the fittings a squirt, check for any bubbly leaks. So it'll give the fronts a squirt, all around the bags. Check for any leaks. That'll bubble up if there's a leak. And our fittings in here. That's our tank up to 150 psi. All four corners are sitting at just under 100. That hissing noise is the fuel pump under there. That's not air lines. Sounds like we are looking good. So we'll just keep an eye on them for a little bit. And another fast forward, and we are all back together. There is the install. You can see I've got the backboard in now. Just drilled some little holes and put grommets and tubes for the pipes to go through. So from this side, all you can see is just a tank there on its own and those two little pipes poking through. Obviously at the back, you can see that one curls around to the compressor and this one curls around to the water trap. And you might notice the pipes are now white, and that is because we had to change them. So the problem was the bigger pipes we used were 3/8 pipe, but the fittings were 10mm. So we had an imperial pipe going into a metric, and 3/8 inch isn't quite 10mm, it's 9.5 something. So there was a little bit of wiggle room, which was okay, they did seal, but if you did wiggle the pipe, it just moved slightly off the seal and it was leaking a little bit of air. So that's something I didn't want at all. I want to be 100% sealed, because when you're driving along, it's going to bounce, the pipes are going to wiggle a bit, and I don't want anything to leak at any time. So we picked up some metric pipe, and as you can see, if we put them together, it is visually different. So the one on the left is a 3/8, the one on the right is 10mm. There's only 0.5 millimeter between them, but as you can see, it's quite a difference, and that's why they weren't quite seated in there. So it's nice and easy. They just curve around exactly the same, and on this one into the manifold. So we are all back together. So everything this side is all finalized. The compressor is in, all wired up. Everything is P-clip. You can see the 10mm hose creeps around there. We've got all our wires going into the body there. Then we've got our front line popping down into the cabin. Everything's bolted on, everything's secure, and everything is nice and safe. This side the same. Even the loom is all P-clipped down the bottom, so that doesn't wiggle around. We've got our water trap there. And I am super happy how clean and tidy this install has come out. So the other thing you can see, we are down on the floor. We are fully aired up at the moment. I've left it overnight and we haven't dropped at all. The other thing I've done in the front, we've done a cam belt, a full service. I've had it up and running now, and the new exhaust does sound good. So let's get these ramp arms out and let it do its calibration on the floor in real life. So I don't know how well we can pick up on the camera, but the exhaust does sound pretty cool. And always with a brand new system, you always seem to get a lot of condensation spitting out. So that's good. If we look at our display, we've still got a full tank and full four corners. So if we go into calibration, would you like to recalibrate your system? Yes. Level surface? Yes. Front wheel straight? Yep. Is the vehicle on all four wheels free of obstructions? Yes. Is your manifold mounted? Yes. Do you have one or two compressors? One over there. Stable stance guard. Do I have height sensors? Vehicle will now move. Are you ready? Yes. Checking mounting. So now it's going to go through its full system. So I'm going to pump it back up, leave it all aired up, and just check we haven't got any drops overnight. But then we can put all our boards back on. So like I said earlier, these are removable. There's just a couple of screws run along here, and that'll allow access to the water trap. So all you have to do is squeeze that out. And something I have noticed already, these new pipes aren't actually white, they're clear. and you can see little water droplets all in there where the compressor's been heating up the air. So even before it enters the tank, we've got water droplets in there. Same in there, we've got a couple of dots. We've got water lines all the way along there. So that's why it is so important to have your water trap before the manifold, because it comes in there, everything gets trapped, because in the manifold is all the solenoids, and if they get moisture, they will start to seize up. And there's all the boards back in, so the box section is all enclosed again, and everything is hidden. So all you see is just those little pipes poking through. I think that looks super tidy. So the last thing we need to do in the back is, of course, add a Super On sticker, and I thought the Caddy crew should be most appropriate for that, so we'll put that there. And the install is complete. So we're fast forwarding a week here, it's been waiting for parts, but the Caddy has been sitting here for about a week and it hasn't dropped any corners. So if we check how the air pressures are doing, as you can see, they're all set to 80 psi and the tank was on 140. And so all that's dropped is just a change in temperature. Always varies a few psi, but everything is still full. So I'll call that an absolute success. And what we were waiting for was our ball joint raisers from Noth. They had to make up a new batch. And like we saw in the white one, these make a huge difference. So the bottom arm bolts onto here. Instead of being at this height, it's now at this height, which straightens up the whole geometry of the front arm. We've also got our flip track rods, and I don't know if you can be able to see, but they actually make special bolts now, so you don't have to drill the bottom arms out. So this whole bolt is custom made, so although it might look like a standard bolt that runs through the middle, it's actually a completely one-off made bits with their logo on the end. And what it is completely parallel to this point to go through the rose joint, so it's completely parallel through there. Then this end is actually tapered out the perfect size of the standard knuckle. So on the other ones, we have to drill out the knuckles and put bigger bolts in. These ones go straight into the taper that's already in the knuckle. So that goes where the original track rod end would have gone, and then the rose joints all sit on top and bolt together. Also, these are version 2 because the first lot we had weren't coated. So these are all looking very special. These are all coated as well. I don't know if these are anodized because that's aluminium. So let's get this back up in the air. Love having AirRide cars because we don't need to put it on blocks of wood or jack it up. We can just swing the ramp right in, strip the front back down and get all these bits on. And the other thing we have to do, because this is an early Mark 1 with the one track rod adjustment, we have to put a driver's side track rod drumstick onto the passenger side, so then we can thread our rose joints onto the track rod. So wheels off, and we've got our dropped ball joints. So where the standard ones sit there, these lower that pivot point, so the bottom arm will now be down here, which looks a bit funny now, but when it's up in the air, they'll actually make sure this stays straight. And on the other side, we've got our track rod ends. So these have got a taper in here. So usually you drill these out and then you can put your rose joint on that end with a straight bolt all the way through. But to save doing that, these ones have got that taper in. So that takes up the taper in the thread, and the track rod ends will lower right to the bottom. Again, that'll look a bit funny at this angle, but when the wheel is right up in the arch up there, these track rods actually come up at like a 45-degree angle, which makes them drive absolutely horrid. So putting these under keeps the track rods nice and straight, and the ball joint raisers keep the bottom arm nice and straight. So they're a nice easy bolt on part, bolt on, bolt on. Like I said, what we've got to change is this track rod is threaded, so we can just put our ball joints straight on the end there. On this side, it is fixed, just something they used to do on the older cars. So you only had one side adjustment, so you get the tracking set up, both sides straight, and then you take the steering wheel off and put that on straight. So there's no threads on this side, so that's what we've got our other drumstick for. And all stripped, so you can see they're like for like there, but that just moves the point where it meets the knuckle up that much. And the same with these go on the top. There's our little taper, which is now taken up in here, and these go on the bottom of the knuckle. So it's a straight swap, all bolt into the original part, no mods needed. I've just popped the rubber boot off these, and these are actually different to the other ones we used. These are all made out of one solid piece of aluminium billet, and then they've just got a circlip where the bearings pressed in, so you can replace the bearings as well. But more importantly, the other ones were an actual rose joint with a threaded bit. Then there was a female to female end, and then you had the threaded track rod, which I had to cut down because this was too long. But if you look at these ones, they're an identical copy to the standard track rods, so we should be pretty close to being tracked up just by a straight swap, and we won't have to cut anything down. So the good thing about these, there'll be no mods to the car. Same with these, fully bolt on, fully bolt on. Very nice attention to detail. So we'll get the boots back on and all this will be protected. These are a nice tight seal to the misalignment spaces, so it keeps it nice and tidy. So a lot of design and development has definitely gone into these compared to the other ones that we used before, which I don't think were even actually from Nove. The ball joint razors were, and these are their Mark IIs, which they've now anodized so they won't go rusty and stay looking pretty. So there's the bottom ball joint, extend it all on so you can see how much more it sits up now. We've got our track rod, which is going to go on the bottom, and then with our magic bolt, no modifications needed, that will sit in the taper just like that, which also means this is fully reversible if you ever wanted to put it back to standard and standard track rod ends. Knit them up and this side will be done. Check. And there's this side ball joint razor all on, and I've just whipped the drumstick off. Like I said, this side hasn't got any adjustment here, and that's what we needed. So all we had to do was order one from the driver's side because they fit the same both sides. So we ordered another driver's side one that has the threads, and then we can put our joint on. So we've got universal boot, so you can cut it to the right size each end. And then we can get this one back on the rack. I've just set it up the same length as what the standard one is. That'll be a good starting point. Let's pop this on. And all back on with our super special bolt, and then that just bolts to the rack up there. So now we can slide the boot over, get all that on. This side will be done as well. That's the boot all back on its factory mount. So now we've got everything in, and as you can see, when it's hanging down there, these are at an awkward angle. It's moved the track rod, so when it's at its seated position, it's pointing down. Same with the bottom arm, they're actually pointing down. But on this car now, that is never gonna be drooped like that, like it would have been as standard. So this is aired all the way out, and they're just pointing upwards. Normal drive height will probably be around there. So now the lower arms and the steering arms are nice and parallel, so it'll get a good range of movement, and then full height down here. So a really nice bit of kit. I really like how they make these bolts, so you don't have to modify the knuckle, you don't have to find the right size ream to put a bolt through or anything. It just bolts straight in and goes. So I'll put a link in the description to this little kit. This isn't sponsored, I just think they're a really nice design, and that's why we keep using them. So let's get the wheels back on. Get it on the floor and drop it like it's hot. There we are, all back on the floor. So let's move the Porsche, get it out in the open, and then we can see what it looks like on the floor. So now that does look cool. That's sunk nicely down in the arches. As always on these videos, it's hard to tell how low it actually is, but this looks super cool. And I didn't know how tight it would be with the wheel spacers at the front, but with the wheel spacers and quite a bit of camber, that does fit, and the car does actually still roll at this height. So you could run forwards and backwards fully aired out, which is pretty cool. I think if we lost the spacers and put different struts on, we could really get this thing on the floor. But if we look underneath, you can see we haven't got too much room before the actual body hits the floor. So I think that looks pretty cool. Back's nice and low as well. Let's just turn this idle down a bit on these bike carbs. Now it's warmed up. What's that at? 800. A bit unhappy. They do sound cool though. We always have trouble getting on these ramps because they've got the jacks in the middle. But the magic of AirRide, you can just glide straight on. So let's get this on the turn plates, and then we can get our alignment gear on. The other thing we can see, because we're on the 4-post ramp, the wheels aren't hanging, so we can have a good look at our suspension mods. So as you can see, the suspension arms are completely level with the floor, exactly where they should be. Same with the track rod at the back. If we didn't have the extenders, this point here would be up at this bolt here, but this end would still be the same. So these would be up at an angle. And the reason this is important is as the suspension goes up and down when you're driving, obviously this will be in an arc. When it's horizontal like this, the arc is very small, but as you go up more, the arc pulls it in as it goes up and down, which pulls the wheel in, which changes the tracking, so you end up going down the road and your front wheels are steering, which is called bump steer. And that is the whole point of these, even at the lowered ride height we have still got good suspension geometry so we don't get that bump steer when we're going. So we'll get the tracking gauges on, and we've just got to loosen this off, adjust our tracking, and that'll just put it to our start point, and then we'll be good to go. So I've got the arms on, got the steering wheel locked straight. So let's see where we are. And I can see with the steering wheel straight, we are miles off. So that one's sitting at 5 degrees. This one, not even on the chart. So let's get this straightened up. So we'll wind this one in. Set that to 0. That one's not far out without little adjust. So now we've both got them on 0. Let's see how parallel we are. We've got this one on just below 7. This one more like 9. So we've just got to parallel it up. But that's looking much better. Right, we are spot on. Just a tiny bit toeing in. Our lines are now overlapping. We're nice and parallel. We are 8.5 on the back. 8.5 on the back. So now we are running straight. So that should drive a lot nicer, because that was miles out. Either way. Got the cool magnetic chargers. So when you see a car without flipped ball joints, when it goes down, it tends to toe right in. So you'll have one toeing in, the other toeing in, and it looks cross-eyed. But as you can see, at full drop, we are pretty much still straight. All in the details. Also, while it's up on the 4-poster, I can just cycle it up and down. I can check nothing's binding underneath, especially on the front. So we'll just give that a cycle up and down, and I'll check everything out. Quite cool to see underneath, because you don't normally see the system working. So I'll do that now. Give the poor little compressor a rest, but sitting down, as you can see, this is looking awesome. Nicely tucked, still some clearance at the floor, so we could go a little bit lower if we wanted. Front fitment is super slick, but remember, we're not actually touching, we can still roll. So I think that classes as the perfect fitment. So we'll just take it for another little test drive to make sure it's all driving straight, but that looks sweet. You can see ground clearance, we're all good, even when lowered. So we've definitely got more scope in the future. If he wants to go more extreme, everything clears. Oh, let's check out our chassis leg notches actually. So as I made them a little bit bigger, you can see we've still got lots of clearance to go even lower if we wanted. So we're holding good air, we're all wheel aligned now. I've just took it for a little spin and everything is a-okay. The only thing I was a little bit disappointed about is how low we have gone, or how low we haven't gone, as the case may be. But I've run out of time in this episode, so I'm gonna leave this on a bit of a cliffhanger, because I have just had the biggest brainwave in the world about these TA Technics front shock. While I was doing the wheel alignment, someone called Peter commented on the last video saying check the front bump stops. Because they're German made, the approval might be that they have really tall bump stops. And that's when it hit me. About 6 years ago, I did a TA Technics conversion on a purple Polo. I did actually film it all, but I didn't release it to you guys. It's still just never edited up. But what the TA Technics front shocks have is they have little bump stop inserts. So the front bump stops are made of several hockey puck type things, and there's 3 or 4 of them in there, and you can take them out and that'll get your desired drop height. So the bag never totally collapses on itself. They have these bump stops in, but you can take them out or add them in to whatever ride height you want it to sit at. So I'm pretty sure if we take the top of those shocks, we're gonna have a lot of bump stops in there, and we can take out our desired ones. So this project is not over yet. Make sure you tune into the next episode, because we're going to have this sitting on the floor. The chassis notches are there ready, all the arch clearance is ready. We're going to have this body dropped on the floor. So I'm really excited about that. And as I said in the first episode, this is a massive job escalation, because it only came in for a service, and now we've done this whole AirRide install. Well, it has just escalated some more. We have had a play with the bike cards, but really they all need rebuilding. If you've just got the ignition on, the float bowls do overflow and leak all over the floor, and we've just had a lot of trouble trying to sync them together. So we've decided to do it properly. We've got a set of Weber 45s, an inlet manifold and a full kit to put on this. So that is going to be in the next episode. We've got some brand new Weber carbs to go on, get all them set up, and we're going to tinker with the air suspension to get this on the floor. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Make sure you give it a like. Be sure to tune in next week because we have got a lot more to do on this. But until then, make sure you have fun.